All right, so after taking the single digit number test, I've confirmed my crow was 7 and my partner's crow was 9. Um, so to talk a little bit about the test, why it's called the crow, it's because the crow is based off of research from a university-backed study back in the 1950s, where researchers would observe crows, and they essentially determined that crows could only hold 3 items in their mental capacity at once. And that experiment revolved around students going into tents and those crows becoming quiet once those students entered the tent, and when they left, they would become noisy again. And as the number of students increased, they kept becoming noisy and quiet until that number turned into 3 students, where when students were still in the tent, they would become noisy. So let's talk about why it's called memory span or crow. So the test is supposed to test what the max number of digits you can repeat back, or amount of things you can hold in your mental capacity at once. And that's your upper limit, or that's your crow. Moving on to who was George Miller. George Miller was a cognitive psychologist at Harvard who had articles that had major impact discussing memory span and short-term memory. Miller's rhetorical use of the quote-unquote magical number 7 came about because in his research he proved that the number of objects an average human can hold is 7 plus or minus 2. So the range being 5 to 9 is what most humans can hold for a number of objects in their mental capacity at once. And last but not least, how can we overcome this limit? By creating and using concepts. So throughout the lecture, we learned that what we feel through our senses are sensations, and those sensations create perceptions. And throughout our lives, we come across endless perceptions, and unless we think about how to group those perceptions into classes, then that can be very overbearing on our mental capacity or crow. And we have to create these concepts by subconsciously thinking about what the key characteristics between these perceptions are, so we can group these concepts by identifying more key characteristics. We can group perceptions together into concepts, and that makes it easier on our crow.